Hola a todos. Bienvenidos, bienvenidos. Welcome everybody. And before I switch to English, and I want to say a few words in Spanish. Bienvenidos a una nueva sesión online que se incluye dentro de un pequeño programa de encuentros que desde Playdoc Festival queremos ofreceros a todos nosotros. En ellos trataremos diferentes temáticas que nos parecían interesantes abordar en los tiempos que corren y para ello pues contamos con la participación de expertos y colegas de profesión. Antes de darles paso, me gustaría agradecerles desde el festival y en mi nombre y en el nombre de Sara García su generosa participación. So Michelle, Ariel, Diego and Jordan, thank you so much for being here. It is a pleasure and an honor to count on you for this panel and I hope you enjoy it. También muchísimas gracias a nuestro amigo y admirado Roger Coza. Él va a ejercer de conductor o moderador de este encuentro. So, Roger, thank you so much. You can take it from here. Enjoy it.
Okay, before starting with this, let me say a few words in Spanish. Muchas gracias al festival por haber confiado en mí. Esta es la tercera vez que estoy haciendo este tipo de moderación en el contexto de esta edición y espero que Playdoc brille como nunca porque es uno de los festivales más hermosos de los que he visitado físicamente y ahora en estas versiones extrañas sin el cuerpo, pero sí con la imagen. Y eso es un poco por donde vamos a ir también a la hora de hablar a partir de ahora. Sorry for the English speakers that I was talking in Spanish. From now on, I will leave English language and I will start in Japanese now. So we'll start here from this point. First of all, it's a privilege to me to be with all of you. All of you have read your text. I admire all of you also, and it's such a privilege to be with Ariel, with Jordan, with Michelle, and with Diego, who is is a good friend of mine. And would say that Ariel also, and I hope that Jordan in the future, and also Michelle, we just know each other and we trust and we know who we are and we share our thoughts and passions on cinema. So, as you know, as everybody knows, the title of this roundtable has been coined or called "Make Yourself Comfortable: Film Criticism from Home." And I wrote a text at the moment that when I was called to be hosting this, and from this frame we are about to start thinking on this. So the text is the following. Any text that was published up until the last decade of the 20th century could not count upon the advantage of the author knowing that she or he could once again see the assigned or selected film in order to review it. Reviewing a few fragments on the very computer in which one was writing the text has to be enough. This novelty that has now become natural is a change of paradigm for all film critics. And the exponential growth of streaming and proliferation of links has become instituted as a main way of watching films. However, having the films right and at hand does not immediately mean having an advantage, because there are determinant modifications in the way films are received. The size of the screen, the audio quality, the intermittence or interruption in viewing due to the subdivision of tasks that characterize the nature of working on computers, and the absence of public or colleagues that makes up another source of information about the immediate effects on the reception of a film. Under these working conditions, these are the benefits and there are benefits and losses, and they inexorably change the perception, concentration, and predisposition of the critics. So this is more or less the idea. And now what I would like to do is just to open up the discussion At the beginning, I will ask for each participant to talk for 6-7 minutes about this general idea. And then through our connections of ideas, we are about to do a kind of montage of ideas. So that's the idea, that's the proposal. So very welcome to all the viewers, very welcome once again to the participants. And now let's start, let's begin with this. So I would like that Michelle, who is at this moment in Berlin, if she could start, if you like, of course.
Thank you. Muchas gracias. I'm sorry, can't do any more Spanish than that. But yeah, it's really fantastic to be on this panel with all of you. I also admire all your writings. Look, it's probably a little bit unusual. I don't identify as a film critic. I never have. I do writing from time to time. I'm an editor at Senses of Cinema. I have been for 20 years. So I've always been, I'm probably the rare person that's like very much film criticism adjacent. Like I'm reading it constantly. I know a lot of critics. I always prefer to hang out with the critics than the industry when I go to festivals, which is annoying because I'm always on an industry badge. So we're always in different screenings. But yes, I just wanted to say that up front. So yes, though I'm an editor at Senses of Cinema and I love reading film criticism, I guess these days my work is more in film programming, which maybe we can talk about as well, because I know you all are involved in that and film curation. And of course, it's all sort of part of the same project that we're doing, I think. So I was at the Melbourne Film Festival for 8 years until 3 years ago when I moved to Berlin, and now I'm sort of freelancing more with festivals, including Rotterdam, the Directors Fortnight in Cannes, and I'm also a program advisor to New York Film Festival. So, I'd like to think I have a fairly international perspective, albeit English language, Anglophone, probably coming from that perspective more, rather than sort of Spanish language. I know there's such a rich Spanish language film criticism world out there that I unfortunately have no access to as yet. So I'm thinking Spanish is probably the next language to learn to get access to all the great film criticism, as well as, French and so on. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. I don't know, Roger, how deep you want me to go into this question just yet.
Do it. You're free on.
I'm not even sure what the question is. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on this. One place I'd like to start is how, if we want to just go purely to the idea of, as a critic or whatever, being sent a link from a publicist, or just having access to links in general, I was always struck, I think it was about 20 years ago, the Argentinian programmer Quintin came up with this lovely term. I think it was something like cinema of anorexia. There was the bulimic and the anorexic. And I guess when I was starting out getting into cinema, as many of us were, I was very bulimic. I just wanted to consume everything. And how I watched films, let's not use that word, consume, I guess it was of the age of the tail end of VHS. And we also had this fantastic TV station, it's still going in Australia, called SBS Television, which showed a lot of international films. And also I was seeing some things in the cinema, certainly pre-links. And so I was watching everything. But then I think once you start working in cinema, even if you're a critic, there comes a point where, you do have to do the work. And that means you're not always having time to watch the films. And so ironically, I have less time for films now outside of my work, which involves watching a lot of films. But in terms of watching films for pleasure, I don't get to do that as much, which is a shame, because I feel like also we're in this age of so many new films, or new to me, new to many of us, are being unearthed, or however you want to describe it, from way back in history. So I feel like there's this little disconnect. I would love to, I wish I was like 18 right now and discovering cinema, because I think there's so much out there to discover beyond the usual canonical Eurocentric, American-centric cinema that I probably came through with. Anyway, where I was going with that, and back to Quentin's terminology, is I wonder if having links it sort of puts us in control of the film, and I feel a bit uneasy with that, about that. I've always loved the idea of sort of submitting myself to a film and letting it work on me, and having a very sort of primal, visceral response to it. And sometimes being able to go back and watch it, but also sometimes not. I mean, I realize some of my favorite films, for some reason, I've only seen a few times. It's like I want to just keep it a little bit precious or something, and not consume it too much. You know, it's like a really rich cheese or a good wine or something. It's like you don't want to become too desensitized to it. And so that's the only thing I have concerns about with sort of links. And this might be very different because you're all working critics, and you have to deal with this in a different way. But it's maybe something we can come back to, is this sort of the sanctity of cinema. And yeah, just having it too available, it kind of bothers me a little bit. So that's just some starting remarks from me.
That's good. We'll keep back to some of your ideas. Would you like Jordan now to go on, if you like?
Sure. My name is Jordan Cronk. I'm a film critic, freelance programmer. I run an organization called Acropolis Cinema in Los Angeles. It's a migrating screening series. We show, for lack of a better word, festival films, stuff I see at festivals that don't screen in Los Angeles. As far as film criticism, I write for CinemaScope and Film Comment and Sight and Sound and Artforum and various places like that. As far as the links and watching movies at home, that of course is how I do a majority of my viewing, or all of it when I'm not at festivals, really, especially in the last year, of course. But I think, like Michelle, we're around the same age, kind of came to cinema at the end of the VHS era into kind of DVDs. So when I was getting into cinema, becoming a cinephile, I was able to kind of go back, I think, and look at films more readily than prior generations, probably because DVDs were more readily available. But certainly in the last 5 to 10 years, the links have become extremely prevalent. And like I said, the last year has been essentially how I watched everything except for canned films. So I'm of two minds of it as well. I mean, as a critic, in a lot of cases, I need to see the movies, or if I want to write about the movies, I need to see them some way. So a link is a necessity. But on the other hand, I can see how there could be a little anxiety about, maybe on the filmmaker's behalf, or even on the critic, sometimes being able to have so readily accessible the film again. Like, I tend to like to watch a movie again before I write about it, at least nowadays. Like today, I literally watched a movie I'm going to write about tomorrow that I had already seen. So I like to do that for details and things like that. But at the same time, there's kind of a beauty in using your memory of a film if it's a few weeks or months old. Because I think you can maybe fall back on just describing a movie, like all the plot or the details of it, instead of maybe becoming a little more creative or imaginative with your descriptions of a film. And, if you haven't seen something in a little while, you might need to do that a little bit more. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if my writing is better or worse if I have seen something, or I'm able to look back on something readily. But I do think it maybe lends itself to a different type of writing. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as far as the amount of viewing I do at home. But yeah. Is that anything else there, Roger? Oh, I don't hear you anymore.
No, it's okay, of course, and we'll go back to you, and I think there are things to take from you. So we'll just prepare step by step, and then we'll be on the subject. So this time maybe let's go, because I feel like I am the host and there's another Argentinian, so I will go to the Israeli-French film critic, Mr. Ariel. So if you like to say something now, it's just to keep up this this conversation together.
Thank you, Roger. You hear me well?
Perfect.
Okay. So I have also some activity, all links to cinema. I am a film critic in Cahiers du Cinéma for more than 15 years now, and I'm also I teach in the university, both in Paris and in Tel Aviv, because I'm originally from Israel, and I work also as a curator, less with festival and more with institutions like Centre Pompidou or the French Cinémathèque and other institutions, not only in France, generally in Europe. And I want to say some things about my experience, let's say, with links with all these different activities. First of all, I would start with what François Truffaut used to say about watching films on small screen on television. There is this famous phrase that he said that watching a film in television, it is like watching a reproduction, you know, and the original must be on the big screen in cinema. But then when the video VHS area arrived, François Truffaut supported this movement, and he said that he loves watch film on video, but only for the second time, which means the first time must be on big screen, and then after the first impression we have for a film, if we want to go and to have a look which is, let's say, more profound, the ideal way is through video cassette, because we can stop the film, we can focus on some shots or some sequences. So François Truffaut became a big supporter of films on small screen, but only in condition that we had the possibility to see them on the first time on the big screen. Of course, all this situation had changed in the era of links, mainly in the field of film criticism, because we see now more and more, and during the pandemic, mainly during the pandemic, film in our personal screen, on the computer, or even through the mobile phone, which I found it really terrible. And I will say, I will tell an anecdote regarding this. Cinema, which is viewed through a mobile phone. But I must admit that when the pandemic arrived, it was for me a kind of liberation to watch film at home. And I created at home the best condition I could to watch film by connecting my computer to a big screen, and by dedicating a whole room in my apartment only to this. I created a kind of small cinema in my apartment where I could watch films with links, but in quite good condition. And it was quite liberating for me because I really don't like to go to see films in press screening because of a kind of a social pressure, which means when you're watching film with all your colleagues, and when you go out from the screening, you must have immediately an opinion on the film, and there is sometimes a lot of tension, and when you are going there with your chief editor, it's even more delicate. So I like the possibility to watch films at home, the fact that I have more time to think about them, to digest them. I like the possibility to see this, to focus on details of the film, sequences, or shot. It was a kind of a liberation for me. And I felt also liberated from this social pressure or professional pressure, which is very strong in Paris because everyone is film critic in Paris, and which is something I feel very strongly in press screening, which are organized here by the distributor. So I felt really free. I felt liberated from something which was quite heavy to handle for me, and I quite like it. But at the same time, I understand there's a lot of limitations and a lot of problems. I saw some film programmers, even in big film festival, like Cannes, who watch film during flights on their mobile phone. And when I think about a filmmaker who dedicated like 3 or 4 years, of his life to do a film, and this film ends on a programmer mobile phone, between 2 flights or during the flights, when you see only fragments of film and then you continue to watch the same film, I think it is very, very problematic because actually a lot of film critics and programmers watch film in this condition. Another thing which marked me is just recently was the last film by Asian Green. The film he shot in Basque countries, and which premiered in the last San Sebastian Film Festival. A film which called Anatabi. I forgot the name. It's a Basque name. The film was meant to release in France in November, and then they closed the cinema, and the distributors sent us link of the film, and I saw the film for the first time with a link, and just last week, I went back to see the film because I felt I missed something in the first screening that I saw at my home, at my place, and I must admit that the first impression I had with the film was very negative, was quite negative. Also, I love Asian Green and his cinema, and I follow this filmmaker for 20 years already. And when I came back this week to watch the film in its French premiere in a cinema, and the cinema was crowded. I was very happy to see a cinema crowded in Paris because cinema audience was reduced by the pandemic in a quite drastic way in France. So the cinema was crowded. Agent Green was here. He spoke about the film, he introduced the film, and after that there was a debate. And I must admit, it was a totally different film. Totally different film. So I rediscovered the film, seeing it from the second time on a big screen. And so I think that there is also another question, which is, I think some films can pass the small screen at home and keep their qualities, but some other films risk to lose most of the quality. And so I think some film can be seen with links, some other just it will be really a crime against this film to watch them on small screen at home. And also I spoke with some film directors who knows that this problem, the programmers all over the world that watch their film on small screens, on the computer, on mobile phone, and some of those filmmakers told me they decided not to send links anymore to festival, and they prefer to invest and to prepare what's the name
DCP?
of the format? Yes,
DCP?
the DCP, and they send only DCP to festival because they wanted they want their film to be seen in good condition on big screen, and even it's much easier to send a link, and you can do it like this. They prefer invest and produce a DCP, and because they can be sure that the film will be shown in good condition. So these are some words I wanted to say for starting, and then maybe I will speak also about my experience as a programmer and as a teacher in the university regarding this possibility to show and to watch film through links.
Thank you so much, Ariel. There are a lot of things that I will take it back to our discussion. Now, Diego, please, it's your turn.
My turn.
It's all yours.
Hi, how are you? I'm Diego Leder. I'm Roger Cosa's bodyguard, and also I'm a film critic. I've been working as a film critic for almost like 30 years, which is a lot. And I did that for a newspaper here in Argentina called Clarín, like mainstream newspaper, for 20 of those 30 years. And then I left, and I am freelancing since then. And I have my own website called Micropsia, which you can read over there. And I also been working as a film programmer and delegate for many festivals, Venice and Rome, Pingyao in China, Macau, and now I'm doing it with Michelle at the Quince directors for night or Quincena de Realizadores. So since I've been stuck in a hole here in Buenos Aires for like a long time, and my English is kind of rusty, I wrote something, and I hope you don't mind if I read, because it's going to be easier. If it gets too heavy, let me know. Anyway, so I was thinking about the question, and I remember that I started working as a film critic in a time where there was no internet available, so we couldn't use that. We had VHS, DVDs, but that was just in case we had to write about older films. But I mean, like new releases on cinema, you didn't have VHS. And the only chance to watch them was only once in a big screen, and that was enough. So for those of us who review mainstream films, things have not changed that much since like mainstream films for Disney and companies like that, they don't use links that much. We still have to go, or we do have to go to cinemas, and we do it that way. But for more independent, older festival films, we might have the chance to use the film more like a record. I keep thinking of this idea of the different types of critics. Like I think we can do it now as music critics, also book critics. So we do work with cinema in a way that it's closer to what they do. What I mean by that is like we can use the film, play it as many times as we want, go to specific parts, review scenes, camera movement, use of sound, etc. Sometimes because of the workflow, we don't do that very often. I don't have time to watch 3 or 4 times the same film when I'm reviewing it. But it could work, especially when you're watching a really good film. Or I can, as I used to say, when you're watching a really dense and difficult film and you fall asleep and you have the time to go back to the link and watch it again, the part when you fall asleep when you were watching it. So I have to say that there are pros and cons in this new world of criticism without leaving the same chair for like a year. The pros, of course, are obvious. I've been saying that you can really write a line of dialogue and use it in your review. You can even go back and check up some sort of plot point of confusion you might have in terms of storytelling or stuff like that. And if you make video reviews, the pros are way too many. I mean, it's like a different ball game altogether. But to me, since I come from an earlier time, I think there's a potential problem related to the overload of information. What I realized, I think Jordan was saying something about it too, is sometimes you really need to separate a bit from the film to be able to write about it, to think about it in more conceptual terms and not being bound to the details of having the film readily available. And also there's like an overload of connections you can make. I mean, you can watch a film and then, like Wikipedia, IMDb, Google, YouTube, etc., even while you're watching the film, which can be helpful in terms of knowing more about what you're watching, but it really can be really problematic in terms of concentration. And I think that one of the questions that Roger, or the principal, or one of the main questions that Roger put in the title of this conversation was the ability to be concentrated in a film when you have the phone about to ring anytime and things that you're doing in your house that doesn't really allow you to be to focus on the film. So to me, the main problems of this criticism from home thing, one is the poor physical state you end up if you're watching a film, for watching films after films after films. in a chair in your house, and everybody knows this. What I was saying about phone interruptions, distractions, you're watching something, but at the same time, you're not really watching it because your head is like somewhere else at some point. And of course, the quality issue is what you were talking about before. It's not the same watching a film on a link. It's not the same watching a film on the computer. But as Roger might tell you, sometimes a good link in Argentina looks much better than because of the screening conditions in some films here, in some theaters here, it's so awful that you're really happier if you have a 720 like 1080 HD link that you can watch in your computer. Sometimes it's even much better than going to a multi-cinema or whatever. So I'm not usually nostalgic about the past, and I never say, it was better then, blah, blah, blah. I try to adapt to the pros and cons of the situation. Like I'm saving money on transportation. I don't have to spend 90 minutes on a subway every day to go and watch Don't Breathe Part 5 or something like that. And I try to be careful, but at the same time, I try to be careful and recognize when I'm going too far. Like, for example, I work in a festival with Michelle, and we both can agree that it can be too much sometimes to be 100% concentrated watching film after film after film, especially when some of them are not that interesting. So sometimes when I watch films for as a programmer, I have to, and then those films open commercially, I have to watch them again because I feel like I might have missed something, and I really need a second or a third view of that film. And so I just wanted to end with this idea that I keep thinking of all of the time, that it's this comparison with music reviewers or book reviewers. Let's say people who review books for a living, right? They've been doing that for centuries. You get a book, you read in your house, and you have your distractions and breaks. And especially it's an art form that, at least for me, requires even more concentration than a film. But they do it, no problem. They've been doing that for centuries. And I'm sure they don't seal their offices for hours or days until they finish a book, and they still can do it. So why we think it's impossible for us? It's a question I ask to myself. I'm asking you too, but I ask myself, and I don't really have the answer for. Of course, you have the difference between the art, sounds and images, basically the quality, and that's completely different. But I still have to think in terms of how can we adapt to this situation the way this other type of critics do. So let me see if no, that's pretty much. Sometimes I feel like people who are my age, for some people who are my age, the transition can be more complicated than for the younger ones. Because they're more used to multitasking that some of us are, but I think we are in this sort of ¿cómo se dice? In the middle of two generations. So if it's a generational thing, sometimes, like I see my kids. My kid is a filmmaker, and he watches films, and he does like 5 things at the same time, and I keep pushing him and telling him, I mean, how can you be doing all these things without losing concentration? And he does it. I don't know how, and I'm pretty sure that he does it pretty well. So to finish, I want to go back to something that I said before, especially in these times of isolation, that links are related to me to that. You watch films isolated. You're not connecting with people. I mean, you're connecting with people through social media, but you're losing your connection with the real world. And to me, that's the bigger problem of watching films at home with links. Not only about meeting people in screenings. I don't care about chat with other critics when I review films. But my problem is more in terms of being stuck in your house and losing the connection with the world itself. So I think our reviews are going to be worse because of that, because we circulate in a world that is close to the outside, that is far from the outside world, to the real experiences of people. And I think that's what worries me about the cinema from home situation, the disconnect from the real world and the problems that might arise from that. Yep, that's pretty much.
Well, there are a lot of things that maybe we could go around, and I would try to connect what you had been saying, and there is something firstly that I think it's very interesting to go back to idea that Truffaut had, or at least envisioned a problem, which was how was the first meeting with a film, and then the possibility to see once again in another condition. Behind that, which is connected with you had been saying, Diego, it's a problem of the situation to be just at home, which is a domestic feeling. It's a plate of certainties. It's a plate of the familiar signs. So usually when we are to a film, that is the opposite, or used to be the opposite. We were with an unfamiliar situation, setup. The world that we were watching at was bigger than us and a strange world. So something is different in that particular sense. If we have to go back, not even to Mr. Truffaut, but Mr. someone which is a philosopher, but in this case, I think it's worthwhile to be seated. I mean, when Benjamin was thinking about the problem of reproduction and the problem of the aura in art, so I think something is connecting here with to be in a film theater with a full dark situation where we are there receiving something. And from the situation to be at home, maybe it's not completely dark, the problem of fragmentation. So there is a point, which I think it should be, we should try it, or we have to try to explore a little bit further. On the other hand, something that you have said, which is, I think it's very important, Diego, it's a problem of to be alienated at home. Because when we are not in connected with others, to be just with oneself, it's not a feeling of to be a monk in the middle of a hermit looking oneself. It's something that you need someone else in order to understand. Films is, in a way, to be in touch with the otherness in certain way. So there is again something problem. And then I'm not so sure that it's a problem of multitask cognition processes and experience and capacities from different generations. Because at the same time, when you were talking, which is a fantastic point about writing books or writing books review or music review, which is true what you said, even though that you have to focus on the music, you have to focus on writing, and the same with a film. So something that I think is happening now, there is not only a new viewer, but also a new film critic, which is a fragmented view film critic. It's not an experience of being in the film. And not say when we are talking about certain films that maybe are 95 minutes, but what happened? We have to see a film like Love Diaz at your house, like 7 hours Love Diaz film at your home. I assure you that few people will see it that at home as it should have been seen on the film. So the experience of time, the experience of space, the experience of reception, the experience of feelings towards the film, the growing of the dramatic scene has changed. So there is, I think, the problem. Fragmentary on one hand, the loss of the aura on the other, and then this position of alienation. Then we go back to those categories that I think it's interesting to go back also to that, to bulimia and anorexia viewers. But let's keep it for a while. That was something that brought Michelle. But this is a problem I think we are facing. On one hand, I don't know how do you see that, but it's in certain ways connected. It's whatever you want to say.
No, I mean, it's better if someone else speaks. No, I mean, if no one's going to speak, no, I think, yeah, Ariel one, yeah, please.
You have to.
No, the sound is off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I have to regarding what Diego said, and then Roger, about the alienation experience watching films at home. So effectively, something is missing. This romantic collective experience of watching film together, but what I really lack is watching films with an audience, regular audience in cinema. And this is why I was so touched to see again Asian Green films. But as I said, the experience of going to watch films with colleagues in press screening is for me quite alienating too. And at this level, the possibility to watch film at my home without dispersion was a kind of liberation. But it's true that what I miss a lot is this collective romantic experience of watching film together with let's say a regular audience. But I wanted to say one more thing about the experience of writing today, of practicing film criticism. The practice itself change because we don't have the right anymore to make mistake in our text. Because we have the film, we can watch it one time, second time, and we can focus on some sequences, some shot. And I think this is, for one hand, is quite positive aspect, yes. But at the same time, we lose something. We lose something, I would say, spontaneous in the practice of writing, because when you see a film and this screening is unique, and then you going back home and you think about the film, and the writing itself keeps something of spontaneous, which is associated to this uniqueness of the screening that we had just experienced. And in this level, I think that one of my best texts, I wrote them and I made huge mistakes regarding the film. Like I remember one text I wrote about the green hairs of Paulo Rocha, that I had the possibility to watch on a certified print. And then I wrote about the film. I didn't have the possibility to go back to watch it, but I noticed years after, when I was able to watch the film again, that I made huge mistake. I almost invented whole sequences, and I think this is something very, very interesting and very touching because through mistake we become sometimes very creative. We let our imaginary connect with the film, and we create in a way our own experience and even our own films. And this reminds me that one of the greatest texts of André Bazin, the text he wrote about Umberto De, the film of Vittorio De Sica, which became one of the founder texts of neorealism. André Bazin had the possibility to watch the film one time, and he make his critics just after, and he totally invented a sequence which doesn't exist in the film, and this mistake, because in very famous paragraph, he described a sequence where the maid in the film is burning ants on the wall, and when you see the film, there's no sequence like that, it doesn't exist, and in a way, André Bazin make a very big lapsus, which was in a way very creative, and I wrote a text, the beautiful text about this mistake of André Bazin, and in the text say that André Bazin wants to define neorealism, and André Bazin wants to define realism, but in fact he finds surrealism, and it's not by chance that these sequences. No, André Bazin wants to find realism, but he's hunted by surrealism. And it's not by chance that this invented sequence by André Bazin included ants, because it sent us, of course, to Un Chien Andalou by Salvador Dali and
Buñuel.
And Buñuel. So I think in the fact that we have the possibility to see a film only one time, and it pushes us to write in a much more spontaneous way, much less technical, and even to do mistake, and sometimes mistake, which were very, very creative. In the case of André Bazin, this mistake in itself became a classic. So this is what I wanted to say precisely on the matter of writing, after watching a film in cinema, or the ability to watch and rewatch a film at home without having this liberating possibility to do mistake.
I just was reading about they're reissuing the book Film is Subversive Art in the US or in North America. It has been printed here in many years. And like in the description for the reissue, it says, "We fixed hundreds of mistakes from the original text," which made me chuckle. And then I think, when they did the same thing with Jonas Meekis's movie journals book a number of years ago, it was the same thing. But if you try to do a book like that nowadays, then you had that many mistakes, it would never get published, obviously. But it's weird to look back at that. But I had a similar experience recently. What you were saying, Ariel, I wrote something about a film, and I filed the piece, and then after I filed it, I realized that I didn't make up a sequence, but I wrote about a sequence from another movie that I had seen the same day or in the same 2 days. And I was like, that's from a different movie. And I had the editor didn't catch it. I don't think they'd seen it. So I had to go in and be like, that sequence not in this movie. It's had a similar kind of plot setup or something. But so yeah, it was really it's weird when you see that many movies, I guess, or able to see that many, that you can make those kind of mistakes. But yeah, that was something that I found funny. But one thing I did want to say that Diego mentioned about going to cinemas and like missing the experience. I don't know about you guys, but when he was saying that, I was thinking about, I can name like specific theaters and places and times where I saw certain movies in cinemas. But when I think about movies I've seen on links, I don't remember where I watched them, like what apartment or house I was in, what country, what computer. That stuff's just like complete. I remember watching the movies, but I don't remember like the experience at all. But I can name like cinemas and where I was sitting and who was there and what the weather was like when I go to a movie in a cinema. So that, I don't know, experience is interesting, and it probably informs the writing and stuff too. But I had never really thought about that in depth until Diego was mentioning it. But I don't know if anyone else has had a similar experience. But
I guess when you write, it forces you to, of course, you're going to remember plot points and character names and your response to it. But I would go further and say, I feel like I don't remember films as well when I watch them on links. I mean, the thing is, oftentimes you're being sent links by a publicist and it either has your name or something like plastered right in the middle of it, a watermark, which is really highlighting the fact that it is like a reproduction, to quote Benjamin. And it's just, I find it very hard to engage. And obviously we know why they do it, but I find it so disrespectful to the film. And just you're literally just looking at your name the whole time. And, it's hard to get past that, especially when they put it right in the middle. But one thing I want to ask you, I guess as critics also, is just to flip it around a little bit. When you're watching a film at home, in some ways it can be very pure, because we all know what it's like when you go to a press screening and the atmosphere becomes heavy with a particular response from the audience that I guess imbues also the aura of the film, negative or positive, or if you can hear people snoring or shifting in their seats or sighing, especially, I hate to say it, the French, the screenings can be you're very aware of the audience response. And I wonder if that can influence criticism in some ways, even very subtly, and whether when you're watching something, I mean, when we put our comments in for the Director's Fortnight, I like that because you really think people's pure response to a film when they watch it on a link, and they're often very different, and I find that really fascinating. Whereas I find sometimes there can be like groupthink when you watch films together. Just wondering if any of you have noticed that as critics.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I want to clarify a point that I made before. Is when I said that I'm worried about the alienation with film critics related to the world, I'm not exactly talking about the cinema itself. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I go more to press screenings than regular screenings here in Buenos Aires, and they're awful. I mean, the people there, most of the people now are, only interested in Marvel films and horror sequels, and it's very, I mean, the whole atmosphere is not really helpful in terms of every time that I leave a press screening, I say like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I was speaking more in general terms, and maybe because of the pandemic has some more a somber effect, a bigger effect than that. It's just the ability to sort of what happens in the film, in the world of the film being about the real world, and then you are here, in this situation which is completely closed off, and you don't go to film festival, you watch festivals in a virtual link, you don't get to connect with reality, and then you get your information through social media, you get to information. And I mean, you've been seeing that in every country in the world, here in Argentina too. It becomes this sort of grieta, ¿cómo digo grieta, Roger? It becomes
split.
yeah, like a real, like, the algorithms take you to a sort of a down a path that's very specific, and some people go to a different one. And so I do feel now that we are not watching the same things, and even if we are not really living in the same world. It might be a little bit too philosophical what I'm trying to say, but that that's why I feel like watching movies in links all the time.
Seems to be Diego. We lost him for a while. He will be back. Was too alienated, the experience. He's coming back. There you are. Diego? Diego? No. Well, we'll wait for him.
I can listen to
I
you.
want to add something.
He's coming back. Diego?
Yeah,
Diego.
I'm here.
Okay.
Now, we were waiting for you. Would you like to?
I don't know if the last part of what I was saying.
You said about the world where you are in, that you were talking about something which is beyond the world that you are in. And then...
Yeah, I think it's the same thing that I was saying before. It's just like alienation completely, which is what Michelle was saying, like, does not think groupthink anymore. It's just which is a good thing and a bad thing. I don't know if I can explain myself. It's a good thing because you can have your own thought, but you think they are your own thoughts, but I don't know. It's more algorithm based. I feel that it should be. So that's my problem with the links life.
Could always do viewing parties.
Sorry.
Sorry. What do you say?
No, I said a throwaway comment about viewing parties, but that wouldn't apply to critics. Go on, Ariel. Sorry.
Well, but
no, if I can say something about Michelle's comments, that she don't remember where she saw links, which is true. I have also the same, exactly the same feeling. That there is something impersonal watching links. It's not connected to an environment. It's not connected to a city. And this may be participating in this alienation experience. But what I want to say also that I participated in some online festivals, either as a film critic or as a jury. And I did it quite a lot in the first year, the second year of the pandemic. And at one point, I decided to stop because I had the feeling that I, in fact, participated in the same festival, because all the festival became like the same festival, and it was like uninterrupted chain of film, so it's not only to watch at home by links, but you lose totally the uniqueness of the experience of a film festival, which is not only a meeting with an audience, with filmmakers, it's also meeting with a city, with a culture, with a civilization. And so after a few experiences like this, I decided to stop because I really had enough with this uninterrupted permanent film festival, which which pretend to be different film festival, but in fact it's the same one, so this is what I wanted to do about.
I was wondering if you have a perception towards what you write if that has changed the quality of your writing. Something Ariel was saying in certain ways help us to think in terms of the invention, the capacity of or what Jordan has said about putting sequences from another film, which is nice. I love that very much. But beyond that, I mean the quality of writing. Let me give you an example, not about film criticism, but something which is connected with writers, editors. When people start just writing on the computers, and they don't see anymore what they are writing on a paper after that, because they don't print it. They are just reading on the computer. And for instance, if the text is not just 400, 500 words, but imagine that is 7,000 or 10,000 words, there is a sense of disconnection from the first paragraph towards the end of the text. There is an imbalance sometimes because the relationship with the computer and the text and the editing is lost. Meanwhile, when you have in a printing version and you read it, you immediately could see the problem between the end, the middle of the text, and the beginning. It's not always like that, but it has happened. I have heard many cases from writing editors that they found that problem in new writers. They just correct what they write on the computer, and then they don't read it on the paper. So there is a kind of difference, the same kind of difference that we can have when we read a long piece on film criticism on the computer or on CinemaScope, just for giving an example, a printed edition of CinemaScope. So I was wondering if, making this connection, if you feel that there is a difference in the way that you write when from the source of your writing is coming from a screening, or the source of your writing is coming from a link. I don't know if you understand my question. Just I don't have an answer. I have really a question. And I can imagine something. I have seen Memoria in a Pichapón, pero se te cool I have not gone to Cannes, so I saw it in a link. Mm. I cannot imagine what can I write if I have seen that film in Cannes in the biggest screen from a ridiculous preview something with all the stuff in it, and I am obliged to see in the computer or at the best version in HD. I'm sure it cannot be the same experience, but not talking about the experience of reception, the experience of writing of that.
Well, I just wrote about that movie, so I guess I can mention it for CinemaScope. So I probably would not have written about it if I hadn't seen it in a theater, just because of the nature of the movie and the sound. Like, the movie is all about sound. So yeah, when I was I knew I was going to write about it before I watched the movie. But when I was there, I was like, this has to be seen or heard in this way to properly, I don't know, articulate some of the nuances and of the sound design and things like that. So yeah, that's one example of something that works that way for me. I've never actually printed what I've written out and edited it as I've gone. I know other generations did that before me. So yeah, that's something I've always thought about. But then when I do see stuff printed or in a different format of how I worked on it, sometimes it's completely different or reads differently. Sometimes I will go in and change the font of something I'm writing just to get my eyes to be different and look at it a different way. Because sometimes even when I send it off to an editor and it comes back and they've changed stuff and the font's different, it looks completely different. So that's always interesting. But I mean, I've definitely seen movies I've written about for magazines that I watched on a link that people would probably be surprised, and I wish I didn't, but I had to for the reasons of a magazine like La Flor I watched on not a link, it was Blu-rays. They weren't giving links to the movie at that time, but the movie hadn't premiered, so I was watching it that way. And then I ended up watching, we showed it in LA and I watched part of it in theater, but that's a movie that I would probably recommend watching in a movie theater if possible. So yeah, for me, it goes both ways. But yeah, in the case of Memoria, I definitely felt that watching it and then writing it. I'm like, I'm really glad I was able to see it properly.
Regarding Memoria, if I can add something, you hear me?
Yes.
No, regarding Memoria, I think this is precisely one of the example of a film who I think loses like 50-60% of its power on a small screen, because I had the privilege, the chance to watch the film in the world premiere in Salle Lumière in Cannes, and it was something unforgettable because it was like a collective hypnosis séance, séance d'hypnose collective. It was something totally magical, and I was really surprised because in Cannes, in the big Salle Lumière, there is a lot of film critics, cinephiles, but a lot of people who lives in Cannes and who get tickets to the world premiere. And I asked myself, will the film work really? Because it's not only a group of cinephile or fans, people who know well the cinema of Apichatpong Verasatakul. There are also people, who are not associated to cinema work, and it was like really a miracle because there was such a tension, inner tension during the screening. Nobody left the cinema. There was. This is why I'm speaking about something like which is close to hypnosis, a collective hypnosis, and I just can't imagine the same film screened and watch on a small screen. I think it will lose 50 or 60% of its power. So I think some films getting better, pass better, have more chance to be appreciated with links. But some films, it's a really total destruction of their poetics. Apichatpong Verasakul, but also the film I told you about by Agent Green. So it depends also the film we're watching. The film itself.
That's what I was gonna say. That I find that when I watch films from links, by the way, I saw Memoria in a link, in a preview link. It wasn't even finished. When I see films on links, I tend to write more about content and not that much about form, because you're stuck more in terms of plot or stuff, or what character did to that, or just go into more general connections between the film and the world, the film and issues. But I cannot really, I don't feel like I can really write about formally that much, or about form that much, because I don't know if I'm really appreciating the film from what it is, and even I cannot really absorb the power of the formal power that the film might have, especially those films. I mean, I can do it with I was watching a Korean action film yesterday, and I don't know, I thought it was, I was enjoying it, but at the same time, I was like, yeah, this might really work much better in a big screen. But I feel that is the difference of writing about, when I write about a film, when I saw it in a link, that in a big screen, it just, you don't capture the aura of the film, I don't want to use spirit because I don't believe in those things, but in terms of the power, the sound. I don't know. I mean, I don't know the sound of memory. I heard the tough, the boom, 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 but I have them in my little headphones. So
Did you jump out of your seat when you heard it the first?
Well, yeah, the first
see,
time.
I did in the cinema.
Yeah. But I think the first time I did it here in my house. But it's a complete different experience, and you write more about that because you write more from the senses than from the storytelling part of the movie. If you can divide that way.
And I think that goes back, I'm sorry, Roger, this is getting a bit further away from what you were talking about, but this idea that when you do have access to a film that you can go back and check things, it becomes a little bit more like science and less like an art, intellectual, when you're trying to sort of focus on the details and make sure you've got that correct, the character's name correct and that sort of thing. And also a really big part of this that was mentioned earlier on was that the fragmentary nature of like being able to stop a film if you have to go answer the door or you fall asleep, so you come back tomorrow. And I really love the limitation of being forced to watch something in 2 hours in the cinema because you don't fall asleep unless you're very jet lagged or something, but you're so arrested. And I think a lot of this is to do with our positionality, our position watching the film. Like, when you go into an art gallery, you're looking at the whole work and you can appreciate it as a critic. But how does film work in that way? Obviously, books as book critics, it's very rare, I imagine, for a book critic to read a big book in one sitting. Like that is a little bit different. But I feel like film should be more like an artwork. We should watch the whole thing because oftentimes I've watched films in many, I've had to stop it and start it for various reasons. And then when I go back and watch it in a cinema, it's like, oh, this film, it feels much quicker now, whereas it felt so long and fragmentary before. So I think also that how do we look at a film and our position to it is really important.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
Go ahead.
I don't remember who said it. Maybe it's Deleuze or Godard. I don't remember. It fits Deleuze in a way because he said that when we go to a cinema and we buy a ticket, we pay for time. In fact, we pay for time, time which is exclusively dedicated to the cinematic experience, and which cuts us totally from the outside world and from the temporality of the everyday. So in fact, what we are buying when we buy a ticket, we buy time, exclusively dedicated to the screen, to the world of the film. And I think this became very meaningful because today, when we watch film at home, we don't have this possibility to dedicate ourselves totally to this experience, the experience of the film. And so in one way, I'm really attached to the experience of watching film in cinema, to pay for the time, for time exclusively dedicated to the film as something almost holy. At the same time, I cannot negligate the advantages of being able to watch film at home. And in a way, I try to create here the best condition and to watch film as if I watched it in cinema, not to be interrupted by anything, and to be as respectful as I can to the film itself. But I love this idea that we are paying a ticket to go to watch a film. We are paying in first of all for the time, you know. Excuse me for being so long.
No, it has been fantastic, I think, and it's connected with Michelle. But Jordan, you were about to say something at that moment.
Oh, I was just Michelle got me thinking of. I mean, she was mentioning movies that she's invested in and wants to watch, and having to stop them. I was thinking about movies you dislike and how links encourage you to, not encourage you, but you're more likely in most cases to turn them off if you don't like them. Whereas in a cinema, you might not walk out as readily, or maybe some people would. I tend to not walk out of a ton of stuff unless it's really, really like I need to get out of there for whatever reason. But yeah, I'm just curious if anyone else have thought about that or experienced that. Because I mean, I stopped a movie this week that I didn't like, and I probably would have watched the whole thing if I was at the festival. But yeah, it's just interesting how that works. And when you're at home, you have so many other things you could be doing. So
it depends on what you have to do with the movie. I mean, if you have to review it, or if you have to see it for programming, or if you just check it out. I still tend to watch the whole thing. Well, not the programming stuff. Sometimes I don't. But the reviewing, the films I have to review that I want to review, I watch it. But I can see my mind completely drift off. And I just go, it's impossible not to start, looking at your phone and checking your phone and thinking, maybe I'm going to eat something. And then you stop and then you do something and you finish watching. And it becomes even worse than the movie was before. So it's like a mess. But I just wanted to make an argument for the link world. And I mean, it could be contradictory to what I said before. It's more of an issue of how can I put it without sounding too for people like we live in South America, we're far from a lot of we don't have access to that many films. So, I mean, maybe we do, Roger and me, and some people we do, but most people don't. And the possibility of having links or films that that you couldn't get before 20-30 years ago was impossible to find, impossible to watch. If they pass by your city and you miss them, and you couldn't see them anymore. I mean, if you live in LA, in New York, in Paris, it's easier to find that every day. So even if it's shitty, sometimes the condition you watch the films, I think for a whole generation of people, the possibility of having access to the films through not the platforms, the streaming platform, but torrents and stuff like that, websites, illegal downloads and stuff like that. It creates a new kind of cinephilia that somehow it's parallel to what we were doing in the 80s or 90s, watching films on VHS or DVD. Because I mean, let's face it. I mean, I'm half or more than half of my film education came from VHS and DVDs, and even stuff that I taped from TNT or cable TV or stuff like that. So I don't want to dismiss the whole idea of watching links as a big problem, but also as Ariel was saying, being in film festivals. Sometimes even 2 or 3 at the same time, watching links that you don't really know what you're watching, is for this festival, for that festival, or whatever else. It becomes messy and complicated. But I think we have to find. I mean, because if we keep sort of complaining all the time, it becomes even worse than it is. So what I try to keep saying to me is like, okay, I'm going to try to find the best way possible to make this a more enjoyable experience, a positive experience. Otherwise, I'm going to get depressed, and it's going to be really worse.
But the bright side
that was my Jewish Ariel connection.
The bright side of the possibilities that links or watching films for writing at home. It's something that, on one hand, Ariel said something, which I am moderating, so I don't want to say something from my side, but I would just say that I know that I have done that. I have experienced the possibility to create a special atmosphere at home and to try to have that, to make a difference between the domestic order from an aesthetic order, which is, for me, it's a big problem. Because a film is always experience of otherness. And so if everything is connected with me, otherness is a little bit lost, or it's weakening. That's a personal remark. But I like to bring back again something that Michelle said about a kind of scientific mind, if you like to say, to put it that way, in the way that links could help us to analyze film in a certain kind of differences, not in terms of be precise only, which could be one of the imperative of that, but also in terms of understanding on the other side. I think that also to have links could help us to think films not in terms of plot, but in terms of composition and in terms of structure and in terms of how different parts work one to the other, because that could be seen, maybe if you are studying them, the film, I mean, you could see that maybe in a proper way. So at the same time, film criticism is not only that, but it's true that that is a possibility. I don't know, how do you see that? For instance, there is someone from Argentina whose name is Ramiro Sonsini. He wrote a fantastic piece on Sama, the Lucrecia Martel films. He had a link, of course, and he saw it like, I think, 10 or 12 times. And then he realized a special sound in the film connected with crickets. And the crickets were only in 7 or 6, 5 moments or sequences in the film. So then he started studying on that. What was the relation between the crickets, or I don't remember if it was a cricket or another kind of animal, but a singing animal, a singing insect. And then he tried to establish a kind of patterns between the sound of the crickets and what was going on in the narrative. And he found something. So I cannot imagine that in watching the film, in that case, in Venice when it came out, which by the same, let me say also, it was shameful that that film would not be in competition, on first competition, in first in Cannes or then in Venice. But that's my point. Anyway, but this is something interesting and creative that I cannot imagine to be doing this in another kind of environment and condition of writing. So that's something good about the links, I would say. I don't know how you see that, but
it depends on the kind of review.
There is silence and something.
No, I cannot stand silent for that long. I wasn't going to say anything, but everybody. I don't know. I think might be a problem. That it depends what type of review, or for what media are you writing. I don't know if. Yeah, it's more like an academia kind of thing, or like a science project kind of thing. I don't know if I want to go into that when I review a film. I don't know if I want to go. I don't know.
Can you get too intimate with a film? Maybe
it could be forced. I mean, if you write a book about the film, or if you're writing a academic piece, I think it might make sense. But I don't know if for a review, your eating is annoying me, Roger. Stop the sound. Yeah. Sorry. No, yeah, that's what I was going. I didn't read the piece. Might be fantastic.
It was not an academic text. It was, I would say, sorry, a kind of a typical text that it could be published in film comment, like those fantastic old texts written by Ken Jones, where he took a film and he created a kind of understanding of structures and so on. And for instance, a text like that, I remember to talk to Ken, and Ken told me, well, I was talking about a piece about that he wrote about Omir Bayev, and I asked him, how do you write that? Well, it took me 2 months and a half. So that's another kind of problem nowadays. How the time that we offer ourselves in order to write, but that's another round table.
It's also about expectation. I don't know if you all I just find now with the proliferation and ease of the circulation of links, you know, I mean, I'm constantly being sent links. Hey, can you just watch this film and give us your feedback or write a review or something? And I don't think that would have happened so much. You wouldn't get filmmakers constantly, and I mean sort of emerging filmmakers, not, you know, I don't have a picture pong banging down my door saying, hey, come watch my film. You'd be like, no, I'm sorry, I don't have time, I can't fit it in. Whereas now there is this expectation that they'll just send you a link. And I mean, I've been a bit guilty of it too. I guess I've sent Jordan a few things like, oh, check out this young filmmaker. And there's also that. And of course, you don't have to watch the film, but I still find it very stressful. And, you know, this expectation from filmmakers that it's not considered work to watch this link. It's just a bit more disposable or something.
Yeah. I have dozens of links waiting that people have sent me that, yeah, it depends. When you don't know someone, it's harder to like make some time for a link that you have no context for at all. Of course, if it's a bigger filmmaker and you know them, it's a lot easier to make that call. But yeah, that's kind of a weird dynamic between filmmaker and critic that is new. That probably is a topic for another discussion. But yeah, that is interesting. And I have picked up small, like what Roger was saying, like details on a rewatch of a movie via a link that I've made like the focal point of a piece. So in some cases it's worked really nicely. Sometimes I don't need that at all. I remember with Memoria, I remember like every shot of that movie. I feel like after watching it, because I was so like focused and like the screen is gigantic and the Lumiere and all that stuff. Yeah. And then other movies you watch and in the theater, sometimes I can't remember them at all. So it just depends on the situation. But I've recently started watching movies at home with like a wireless headphones, and it's made the experience way better for me as far as like picking up sounds and not having it drowned out by city noise and things like that, which I never had really paid much attention to while watching a link. But now once I have those on, and it's like noise canceling and it's so much nicer, I'm like, oh, at least it's like a little bit like more immersive than just watching a link in a normal situation. So I don't know if people have been thinking about that, but I do recommend like some nice headphones.
Can I ask a question to you guys? Do you hear me?
Yes.
Did it happen to you that you watch a film on a link and enjoy it a lot, and then you watch it on a big screen and it wasn't as good as you thought it was? It happened to me once. I remember I was programming in Rome. I programmed a film that I watched on a link, and I loved it and I liked it a lot. And then when it was the premiere, it was a big deal, the premiere, blah, blah, blah. And then I was watching the film on the big screen. It's like, shit, this is not that good. Not because it wasn't working with the audience. That's a different issue. But sometimes you think that. But it was more cliche. There was some, too many sunsets in a way that it was a little bit annoying. And you didn't realize when you were watching it on the small screen, because the limits of it. So that was the question. If it happened to you the other way around. You can answer.
It has with me, but I can't remember a specific example. Maybe Ariel sounds like he does.
I don't think it ever happened to me. I don't think so. If it has, no, I don't think it's ever happened to me. It's
interesting. You mean the other way. Like we're talking about how watching films on a small screen can minimize the emotional effect or the intellectual effect of the film on us. But then you're saying it could also minimize the defects of the film as well. That's an interesting take on that. I like it. I mean, also as critics, maybe there are things to sort of miss out on.
I had a conversation with someone we know about a film for a festival, which I loved, and I watched it on a small screen. And he told me, you know what? I watched it on a big screen, and it doesn't really play as well. And I couldn't watch it on a big screen at the same time. So I had to say, okay, if that's your point, it's okay. But it might happen that some films are really impressive, or somehow they work better on a smaller screen. It's hard to really think about it as a norm. You know, usually it's the other way around. But I don't know. It happens. It might happen for a more narrative, square type of film that you really get into the plot, whatever, and you're watching it on a small screen, and then you watch it on a big screen, and then you realize, it's kind of flat and it doesn't really work.
Or maybe it's too bombastic. I'd find that. I find, for me, for some reason, the films that are easier to digest, if you want to call it that, on the small screen are more like sort of straight documentaries, these very Anglophone, bombastic, high cut, fast cut sort of documentaries. And I think it would just be too much for me on a big screen.
Now, what I can say about your idea, Diego, is that what happened to me more than one time is to be disappointed by a film after I discover it with a link at my place, and then watching it again on big screen and being disappointed, but not by the film. I was disappointed by the fact that the audience was not respectful for the film as I was when I was alone watching it at my place, because sometimes watching film, we romanticize cinema, but today sometimes go to cinema, it's a really shitty experience. You watch film with people who doesn't stop to speak during the projection. They eat popcorn, and at that moment I miss. It happened to me to miss the experience I had watching a film alone in my place. So in this sense, I of course, there is this ideal to watch a film in big screen, a romantic ideal of collective experience in cinema, but today it's became sometimes a very problematic experience, because people don't have patience anymore to watch films. They look at the smartphone during all the screening. You have all the time light. People speak with each other as if they were in cinema. At that moment, I miss the experience I had watching the film at first alone at my place. And in Paris, in France, people are still very respectful, to the idea of a film that we are watched together, and we have a kind of respect. but in many other countries, it's became sometimes really problematic to watch a film with audience, because the audience itself lost the let's say the reflex of being silent, of being attentive, of being patient. The audience is changing also because of this new way of consuming film through smartphone, through computers. So in that level, sometimes I prefer watching a film alone than discovering the same film destroyed by problematic reception by a disrespectful audience.
There is something that you have mentioned, and not directly now, Ariel, and in certain ways, Michelle, in other moment, which I think is an important question to think about it. As you might have noticed, and even one of the things that I was surprised to find in one big A festival, when you were accessing the film through the platform, you have the possibility to change the speed of the screen. Instead of 1, to put it to 1.5 or 2 or 6, which was something for me, it should have been a scandal in certain ways. I know that they were not on the mind of the people who are aesthetically behind the festival. It was something connected with the platform. And but at the same time, I realized that if that had happened, it means that this experience has been universalized. And I'm sure that many film critics, many programmers might be watching those films with no one the right speed, but if not, another kind of a speed. So this is something else connected with domestic experience of watching film, which goes through viewers, film critics, programmers, and maybe filmmakers watching film from others, not watching their films, I guess. But that is something which is important, because what does it mean? This is a problem of time. Time itself in the experience of viewing a film at home. Then the problem of a space, because to watch an extremely long shot done by Mr. John Ford is different from watching that on a big screen on a small screen, which is another way. The scale of a space in films nowadays, because there is a kind of, I think there will be small changes in how films are being composed, because if they are about to be shown only in platforms, I don't see what could you see
like
a film
that
like
for a long time.
Yeah, Costa da Morte. How do you see Costa da Morte? It's a film with only long shots. So I don't know. This is something to talk about, maybe, and just to after that we could close.
Yeah, no, I have the feeling that that's another issue that we don't want to get into now. That's the whole issue of series, but there's a more episodic kind of way of watching films now. I think because of the platforms, or because of the time the people spend on watching something. Remember this discussion about The Irishman, the Scorsese, The Irishman.
Yeah.
But they were saying it's too long, but at the same time it's shorter than any TV series, any season, or even a short season. And this idea is how long it is for one sitting, right? And people think, I can watch a series that's probably 5 hours, but I know I have my parts. So I keep thinking that more and more the filmmakers are going to, and the producers especially, are going to start making films with that in mind, with that sort of construction made for television, made like a series, like scripts are going to be more like that. So you can stop at 30 minutes and go to the bathroom because there's like a plot point. It still happens anyway. But so I feel like time and the experience of time is kind of weird, because this thing about people watching Netflix for 8 hours straight, the same series, and at the same time they think they're watching something that's very quick and fast, but they would never allow themselves to watch a Lab Diaz film. And so it's kind of like, I don't know how to put it in words. It's just it's a mess for me. And also the what you were saying about 1.5 in the velocity of the links. I don't know how anyone can watch a film like that. I mean, I think that they put that for market people. They put it for people from buyers and sellers and stuff like that they can, let's see how that plays, but I don't understand how audiences or film critics can watch a film and to buy 1.5. If Netflix has a 1.5 thing on it, so it's impossible to understand.
I think it comes from the podcast world or something, but it's unbelievable that they think they can apply that to a film.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, but I think we should. I don't underestimate it that maybe this is experience which is taking place, and even colleagues, because they don't have time or whatever, they might be watching films like that sometimes. I think it's an imperative. You don't have time. I have to review it. And then what do? I don't, but it could be, But the problem is it's not an ethical problem. He is a bad guy or he's a good guy. It's about how the technical aspect of cinema push you sometimes to things that you don't think about, and you have to think about in order to stop and to have to be autonomous in certain ways.
I think in this occasion we have to salute also the work of platform like Mubi, which create a very interesting a new relation between watching film and film criticism, because it's very important for them to create a contextualization of the film through video essays, through criticism, to text about the film which accompanies the film themselves, and also the way they making participate, create a participation, active participation of cinephile, of people who are watching the film through this platform, with the film himself, through comments, through text. So I think what's happening in some platform, it's very interesting, not only on the level of consuming film, on watching film, but a new relation between film and criticism. A new interaction between film and criticism. Not enough platforms are aware of the importance of this contextualization of film through text, through criticism. But I think what Mubi does is a really good example of a new possibility that we have today and which were created by the new way of watching film, of consuming film, that we can criticize for some points, but at the same time, there is new possibilities also in the matter of the relationship between films and film criticism.
I think we should add that another platform like that is thatfilms.com, which is a Czech Republic. And they have been done before because they are 16 years old of existence. And they were created, because I think that movie and that, they are creating a film culture for this era, which is, I think, the big missing point in things like platform like Netflix. Anyway, I think we should start thinking to say goodbye one to the other, and because we have been almost 2 hours, and it's enough. Maybe it's enough. I don't know if you want to say something else, just a small remark, and then to have that feeling of farewell, which is always difficult but necessary.
Yes.
And just one last thing. I just want to say that I don't want to open up the discussion now, but we must mention that there are certain films in this environment with this real push towards links that are just not going to be written about by critics. And I'm thinking of experimental, Nathaniel Dorsky. There's certain experimental filmmakers who will just not send a link or not even probably have their work digitized. So I do worry that also certain films just aren't being written about if people can't see them some other way.
We need many round tables more. Yeah, but you are right. Yes, Ariel.
No, I just want to thank you, and it was very interesting to meet you. And I know Diego, of course. We are friends, but also I will be very happy to meet Michel and Jordan. And I don't know. I will be in Tree in PlayDoc, the next edition. I don't know if someone is intending to come to this festival, but they focusing this year on the 2 films that one of them I know is Beth Gordon, and another one someone I never heard about, and I'm starting to discover, and it's quite amazing. Manfred Kirschenheimer, that is, let's say, part of the New York avant-garde or independent cinema of the 60s and 70s. So I'm very happy to go back to PlayDoc and to Tree, and to continue to discover his filmmaker that I never heard about, which means that we have still a lot of things to discover, and that's all.
Thank you so much, Ariel.
Yes, and a question to Diego. Diego, yes. If I understand well, you are in Israel now?
No, Jordan is in Israel. I'm in Buenos Aires.
You are Jordan.
You're in Tel Aviv, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I'm here. Yeah.
Anyway,
Jordan is. So I just want to tell you that I'm coming to Tel Aviv in the October to teach one semester in Tel Aviv University. So we will have the possibility to meet.
Let's do it. Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay. You will stay there until when?
For the rest of the year.
Okay. So we will surely meet in Tel Aviv.
For sure.
Very soon.
Okay.
So.
But yeah, thank you, Roger and PlayDoc. It was. There's tons of little side roads we could go down, I'm sure, but this was really fascinating, and yeah. I have links to watch now, so.
I was going to say the same thing.
It was good. Good meeting Diego and Ariel, and catching up with Roger and Michelle. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you to all of you. And Diego, would you like to say something else?
Yeah, I have a jury meeting of a film festival, so pretty much the same kind of.
Okay.
I don't remember the films I saw. I don't remember which festival actually is, but I think I have one.
You want to say
No, I do remember.
you want to say a Zoom jury meeting?
A Zoom meeting,
Or
yeah.
A Suman. He's a Suman.
Zoom.
We are
Okay.
Suman and Suwoman. Charles, on behalf of Angel, he has a problem. He wrote me a text by WhatsApp telling me that he had a problem with the battery in his computers, but he wanted to say thanks on behalf of the festival, also with Sarah, and he wanted to thank you very much. So on behalf of him, I'm thanking you. On behalf not of him or anyone, through my heart, thank you so much for being so kind and to be together talking for almost 2 hours. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Gracias, gracias. Y hasta la próxima. Bye-bye.
Yes, yes.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye. Bye.
Ciao.